Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. By the time doubt finally settled into my bones, our marriage had already learned how to move without honesty. My name is Marcus Cole, and for years, my life followed a predictable rhythm. Early mornings, long hours managing logistics for a shipping firm, quiet dinners at home, a shared routine that once felt comforting, even sacred. My wife, Vanessa Cole, used to wait for me on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, asking about my day like it actually mattered. That version of us didn't disappear overnight. It faded in pieces. First, the conversation shortened, then the eye contact, then the way she'd smile at her phone but sigh when I spoke. Desire didn't vanish. It simply moved somewhere else, leaving behind politeness where intimacy used to live. I noticed things before I admitted them. The new dresses she never wore around me. The sudden business trips stacked back to back. The way she started saying work people instead of names, except for one. Lucas Grant. Her voice always softened when she mentioned him. Not enough to raise alarms, just enough to plant them. When she told me about the upcoming industry conference, she delivered it like a headline she expected applause for. Big opportunity. Important connections. Career growth. All the right words. Arranged too carefully. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I didn't beg. I watched. That night, as she showered, her phone buzzed on the dresser. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The notification preview was enough. Can't wait to finally have time alone. No name. Just a message. Clean. Safe. Damaging in its simplicity. Something inside me went cold. Not angry. Not explosive. Focused. The next morning, she kissed my cheek before leaving for the airport. A quick kiss. A goodbye kiss. The kind you give when you're already somewhere else. Stop worrying so much, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'll be back before you know it. I watched her walk out with her suitcase, heels clicking confidently against the floor. The door closed. The house stayed quiet. I stood there longer than I should have, listening to the echo of a marriage that no longer belonged to both of us. That's when I made my decision. Not out of rage. Not out of desperation. Out of clarity. I booked my flight that same afternoon. Same city. Same dates. Different purpose. Because I didn't want confrontation. I wanted truth. And truth, I knew, was waiting behind a door she never thought I'd be standing near. Las Vegas has a way of lying to people. Bright lights, endless smiles, promises that what happens there doesn't count. I arrived late in the afternoon, the heat wrapping around me like a warning I chose not to ignore. I didn't come for temptation or distraction. I came for confirmation. The hotel lobby buzzed with artificial excitement. Laughter bounced off marble floors. Slot machines chimed like nervous laughter. I checked in under my own name. Calm voice, steady hands. The clerk handed me my key card and smiled like she'd just welcomed another tourist chasing an illusion. What she didn't know was that my room shared a wall with Vanessa's. I hadn't planned that at first. I only asked for a room on the same floor, close enough to keep things simple. Fate, or irony, did the rest. When the elevator doors opened and I saw the room numbers, my chest tightened. Close wasn't the word. Adjacent was. I stood in my room for a long moment, listening. The walls were thick, but not honest. Sound leaks when secrets get careless. I unpacked slowly, folded my clothes, plugged in my phone charger. Every movement felt deliberate, controlled. This wasn't a reckless chase fueled by jealousy. This was observation, documentation, protection. That evening, I watched the hallway through the peephole. Vanessa stepped out dressed differently than she ever dressed for me. Confident, relaxed, alive in a way I hadn't seen in months. She checked her phone, smiled, and knocked on the door across the hall. Lucas Grant opened it. He leaned casually against the frame, already familiar with her presence. No surprise, no hesitation, just comfort. The kind built over time, not meetings. They didn't notice me. They didn't have to. The door closed. I exhaled slowly, like I'd been holding my breath for a year. I didn't move. I didn't knock. I didn't react. Instead, I pulled out the small voice recorder I'd packed. Not to invade, not to spy recklessly, but to preserve what was already unraveling. The truth doesn't need help exposing itself. It only needs patience. Later that night, I heard laughter through the wall. Soft at first, then careless. Words slipped through the silence. Compliments she never offered me anymore. Plans spoken like they'd already been agreed upon. "I hate lying to him," she said at one point, her voice muffled but unmistakable. Lucas laughed quietly. "You're not lying. You're evolving." That sentence settled deep inside me. Not like a wound, but like a verdict. Around midnight, footsteps moved into the hallway again. I watched through the peephole as they left together, dressed to impress the city, not the conference. Her hand rested naturally on his arm. No fear, no guilt, just entitlement. I followed at a distance. Not close enough to be seen, close enough to know. They didn't go far. Just a private lounge off the casino floor. Dim lighting, soft music, the kind of place built for whispers and decisions people regret later. I sat at the bar, back turned, reflection visible in the mirror. I watched them talk, lean in, touch hands, share glances that spoke louder than words. This wasn't new. This was rehearsed. I recorded nothing there. I didn't need to. Public places offer witnesses by default. When they finally separated for the night, Vanessa returned alone. She walked past my door, humming softly, completely unaware that the man she dismissed as overthinking was standing 3 feet away, listening to every step. I waited 10 minutes. Then I knocked. Not on her door. On his. Lucas opened it, confusion flickering across his face before recognition hit. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said calmly. "You can tell me how long this has been going on." His eyes darted down the hallway. He stepped back instinctively, the way guilty people do when the truth suddenly has a voice. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. I smiled. Not angry, not threatening. "Certain. That's okay," I replied. "You'll explain it later. To the right people." I turned and walked back to my room, leaving him standing there with the realization that his secret had an expiration date. Inside, I locked the door and finally allowed myself to sit down. My hands shook, not from fear, but from release. The doubt was gone. The guessing was over. What remained wasn't revenge yet. It was strategy. Because betrayal hurts, but exposure changes everything. And by the time Vanessa flew home believing she'd gotten away with it, she had no idea that the story she was living had already been recorded, time-stamped, and quietly prepared for its final chapter. The flight home felt longer than the one out, even though it was the same number of hours. Vanessa sat 2 rows ahead of me, unaware, relaxed, scrolling through photos from the trip like they were souvenirs instead of evidence. She laughed softly at something on her screen. I wondered if she realized how loud lies sounded once you stopped believing them. I didn't confront her. I didn't even acknowledge her presence. That silence was intentional. Silence makes people careless. It convinces them they're safe. Back home, life resumed its familiar shape. Morning coffee, evening dinners, polite conversations that skimmed the surface of something already dead. Vanessa talked about networking dinners and late panels. I nodded and asked the right questions, the way a husband was expected to. Behind that routine, I was moving. I met with Harold Bennett, a quiet man with sharp eyes and a reputation for never wasting words. We sat in a neutral office, sunlight spilling across polished wood, as I laid out everything. The recordings, the dates, the messages I'd seen, the patterns. Harold didn't interrupt. He listened like a surgeon studying an X-ray. "You didn't provoke anything," he finally said. "You observed." "I don't want a spectacle," I replied. "I want accountability." He nodded. "Then we build it carefully." Over the next few days, I gathered what I needed without rushing. Phone records, travel confirmations, a timeline that didn't rely on emotion, just facts. I didn't twist anything. I didn't exaggerate. The truth was heavy enough on its own. Meanwhile, Vanessa grew comfortable again. Comfort is dangerous. It makes people sloppy. She started leaving her phone unlocked, taking calls in the open, mentioning Lucas by name now, as if normalizing him would erase the tension she sensed but couldn't identify. "You'd like him," she said one night while stirring pasta. "He's driven, focused, knows what he wants." I met her eyes. "Does he?" She froze for half a second, then smiled. "Of course." That was the moment I knew she sensed a shift. Not the details, but the imbalance. When one person stops reacting, the other starts unraveling. I reached out to Evelyn Grant through professional channels. No accusations, no dramatics, Just a request to talk. She responded faster than I expected. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. She arrived composed, posture straight, eyes steady. The kind of woman who had learned to read rooms before they spoke. I assume this isn't about business, she said. No, I replied. It's about honesty. I showed her only what was necessary. Not to hurt her, but to respect her intelligence. She watched without interrupting, her expression barely changing. When it ended, she closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. I thought I was imagining things, she said quietly. Thank you for not letting me stay blind. That night, Vanessa noticed I was calmer than usual. Too calm. You're quiet, she said. Everything okay? Better than it's been in a while. I answered truthfully. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The final piece came together during a meeting with Dana Whitmore, an HR compliance officer whose job was to ensure professional boundaries weren't crossed under corporate logos. The documentation spoke for itself. Policies existed for a reason. Consequences followed when they were ignored. I didn't ask for punishment. I asked for review. The day everything shifted, Vanessa came home humming. She set her bag down and started talking about future plans, promotions, travel, maybe moving closer to the city. I let her finish. Then I placed a folder on the table between us. What's this? She asked. Your timeline, I replied. From your perspective and mine. She opened it slowly. Her hands trembled as she flipped through pages she didn't recognize but couldn't deny. Her voice cracked when she spoke. You followed me. I listened. I said calmly. You left the door open. She looked up at me, panic finally surfacing. We could talk about this. We can fix it. I stood. That was an option before honesty became optional. The next morning, her phone rang before sunrise. Then again. Messages stacked up faster than she could read them. Confusion turned to fear as she realized control had shifted. By the time she left the house, pale and shaking, she still believed this was something she could manage. She was wrong, because while she was preparing excuses, I had already prepared closure. And the next phase wouldn't be quiet. It would be undeniable. The call came just after noon. Vanessa's voice was tight, stripped of confidence. We need to talk. Now. I didn't rush. I finished what I was doing, shut down my computer, and drove home with the calm of someone who already knew how the conversation would end. When I walked in, she was pacing the living room, phone clutched in her hand like it might save her. They're asking questions, she said. HR, legal. Everyone's acting like I did something wrong. I set my keys down carefully. You did. Her eyes filled, not with regret, but fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of exposure. She tried to reach for me, and I stepped back, not dramatically, just enough to make the boundary clear. I made a mistake, she said. It didn't mean anything. You know how lonely I felt. You were always working. There it was. The final script. Blame disguised as explanation. I worked to build a life, I replied. You chose to replace it. She shook her head. You don't understand how trapped I felt. I understand perfectly, I said. You felt entitled to an escape without accountability. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, and whatever she read drained the color from her face. They're suspending Lucas, she whispered. Pending investigation. I nodded. That's usually what happens when professional lines are crossed. She looked at me then, truly looked, like she was seeing a stranger wearing her husband's face. You planned this. I prepared for the truth. I corrected. There's a difference. She sank onto the couch, the weight of everything finally pressing down. What do you want? The question wasn't about reconciliation. It was about damage control. I want peace, I said, and I won't find it pretending we're still the same people. That night, I slept in the guest room for the last time. The next morning, papers were signed. Not in anger, not in chaos, just clean lines and clear decisions. Vanessa moved out within the week. Lucas's world unraveled quietly but thoroughly. Corporate investigations don't shout, they document. Titles disappeared. Invitations stopped coming. The silence that followed him was louder than any argument. Evelyn filed for separation on her own terms. She didn't thank me again. We'd already said everything that needed saying. Some truths don't create bonds. They create exits. As for me, the house felt different once it was empty of pretending. Too quiet at first, then peaceful. I started running in the mornings again, cooking real meals, reconnecting with parts of myself I'd abandoned while trying to hold together something already broken. Growth doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in through consistency. Weeks later, Vanessa called. "I didn't think you'd actually leave," she admitted. "I didn't think you'd actually lie," I replied. She paused. "Are you happier?" I looked around my kitchen, sunlight spilling through the window, coffee warm in my hands. No tension, no waiting for explanations that never came. "Yes," I said honestly. We ended the call without bitterness. Closure doesn't need cruelty to be complete. People think revenge has to be loud, public, humiliating. But the strongest kind doesn't destroy, it exposes. It removes access. It reclaims dignity. I didn't ruin her life. I stepped out of it. And in doing so, I got my own back. Not the man who waited. Not the man who doubted himself. But the man who listened when silence told the truth.